Fine.
Hi James. Welcome to having a chat with us at Family Education Trust. It's really great to see you this morning, and we are delighted that you're on board and coming to talk to us at our annual conference on the 21st of May. So it would be really great if you could share with our supporters just a little background into how you got involved in gender ideology and what your thoughts are on this subject.
Sure, no problem, and thanks for having me. And I'm looking forward to the event very much. I, in relative terms, I'm quite new to this world. Actually, I started off in the field of law. I was a criminal barrister. I worked in the civil service for many years. And I started to volunteer at Childline and as a counsellor. And in my spare time, that ended up becoming the catalyst for everything that followed. I was there for about 6 years in total. And over that period of time, I began to speak to more and more young people of younger and younger ages, particularly young girls, saying that they felt that they were trapped in the wrong body. And it was this that caused me to set out and immerse myself into this world of gender dysphoria, into treatment pathways, into research, etc. And I was becoming more and more concerned with what I was finding out. During this time, I'd also decided that I was going to do a transition of my own into a new vocation of psychotherapy. So I was taking a master's degree in psychotherapy. I was 3 years into the course. Early last year, I began to get concerned about government proposals on banning conversion therapy because of potentially unintended consequences that could be for explorative ethical therapy for young children. I was concerned that it would basically force therapists into simply affirming and never exploring. And we've seen that happen in other countries with similar legislation. So I took it upon myself to try and challenge this in the public forum. I launched a petition to the government asking them to safeguard explorative therapy. We got 10,000 signatures and the government responded quite favourably, I might add. But I attracted a lot of flack for this from the trans activist community. And in May of last year, over email, I was expelled from my master's course with immediate effect, with no right of appeal, no opportunity to have a single conversation. They publicised the expulsion online to stick the boot in. And a few weeks later, I was booted out of Childline as well, where I'd given up 6 years of my life to volunteer to counsel young children. I'm currently in the process of taking my university and my therapeutic regulatory body to court on the basis of discrimination against my beliefs. So I'm in the thick of that at the moment, but this has opened up a whole Pandora's box for me. And from the people I've met and the conversations I've had and the materials that I've seen, I'm becoming more and more concerned about children in terms of what they're being taught at schools regarding this ideology, in terms of the approach that medical practitioners are taking, in terms of what charities and third sector organisations, the misinformation that they're putting out there. So this has opened up a world that I never knew existed, but it's something that is of such great concern to me. And I think the public need to be aware of what is going on, particularly in relation to their children and what's happening in schools.
Yeah, it's just shocking. I mean, I didn't realize that about Childline in your case. That's really appalling. It's what we've been seeing recently is it seems like any safeguarding concerns seem to be shut down. Sort of when the word trans it is mentioned, it seems that seems to sort of trump safeguarding, which we've seen in the cases of girl guiding, where the senior leader had posted really appropriate images on social media, posing in bondage gear and holding an assault rifle, which you would imagine in any other circumstances that that would be enough for gross misconduct, to be honest with. And then we see that parents concerned about that, rather than having their concerns dealt with, were reported to the police for a hate crime by girl guides, which just seems crazy that you're not allowed to talk about these things that are legitimate concerns, but it's constantly shut down.
Well, yes, it is very concerning. It's also not surprising because of the amount of vitriol that people are on the receiving end of when they do speak out about these things. For example, I've been looking a lot into the charity Mermaids, And a whistleblower, a former trustee, reached out to me and revealed some issues that she had had when she was there that were not listened to. She's too frightened to go public about this, and she fears what she'll be met with from those who are still involved with mermaids. Now, that's unfortunate, because I think it's important to try and get these stories out there, but at the same time, I completely appreciate it, because, as you've said yourself, raising safeguarding concerns, you will be met with an onslaught of being called a transphobe, a bigot, and receiving a lot of hate and abuse online.
I know it is really concerning. I mean, we're involved. We're hearing from a lot of parents who are very concerned about this ideology being promoted in schools from very young children. You know, from nursery age upwards. And in fact, we had one parent on a group that we're involved with the other day who has been trying to explain to the head teacher at the school that her child's at, that she's really concerned about what they're promoting, the idea that children can be born in the wrong body, and not happy with the fact that this is being promoted to such young children. And rather than actually be willing to discuss this parent's concerns, the head teacher suggested that she should withdraw her child from the school and homeschool instead. Which is ridiculous discrimination. So it is, you know, more and more we're hearing about not only worrying materials coming into school from external RSE providers, which are not regulated at all, but also of teachers secretly affirming children who are expressing gender identity issues and not sure with how they want to identify, particularly young teenagers. You know, it's common to have these issues in puberty, but for schools to then be affirming without parental consent is something that we're very concerned about. I'm not sure what you feel about that parents can do.
It's terrifying. I mean, parents have to put their trust and their faith in schools. I mean, they're there looking after their children for so many hours every day. And I think almost we've taken for granted now that the things that our children are being taught in school are even factually correct, because, as you've highlighted, there's some, you know, biological inaccuracies that are being taught in schools these days. I think it's very difficult for parents to also challenge and revisit what has been taught incorrectly at school with their children. I spoke with a mother recently who said that the young child came home and was talking about what they'd been taught in school, which was, you know, inaccurate. And the mother tried to revisit that and have a conversation with the young person and offer up a different perspective. And their child said, well, I'm confused, because if I'm being taught it at my school, it must be true. And you can understand why a young person would think that. I mean, they're taught to believe that their teachers are right and only wishing to impart wisdom and knowledge upon them that they can utilize in later life. And this stuff has been drilled into them in schools, often in quite worrying kind of almost under the cover of darkness. I mean, I'm sure I'll get an opportunity at your event to discuss this, but some of the materials I've come across in which ideology has almost been snuck in through the back door, almost subliminally, it's really quite worrying.
Yeah, we've seen examples of that, of these questions coming up in really randomly in for example, maths lessons, and it will talk about suddenly talk about that Robert identifies as Roberta, and, you know, how many apples are they going to go out and buy, and silly questions like that it has no business being in these lessons. You know, the RSE is somehow coming into the other lessons as if it's being spread across the whole curriculum with no input from parents, and it's just like you said, it is coming in through the back door, and I think it's something that parents need to watch out for. But it's difficult because I suppose parents can request to see the RSE curriculum, and parents still have a right to withdraw their child up to a certain age from these lessons. But then it's a difficult decision, because you don't want your child, as a parent, I guess most parents don't want their child to be singled out as being different from their peers. But I guess at some point, if your teachers are not willing to enter any dialogue about these materials, you know, what are you supposed to do as a parent? I mean, we know several people who's homeschool, but that isn't an option for everyone.
Yeah, it's tough. And yeah, parents I've spoken to, again, that they're worried about even complaining to the school, because these things find a way of getting back to the children there, and they don't want their child to be set apart from the others and to end up being alienated or ostracized. But I do think if we're going to tackle this, it has to be through a combination of micro and macro. I do think parents, if they have concerns about what their children are being taught, actively investigating, finding out the materials, and if needs be, complaining. I do think it's important that happens, but it's not enough, because this is a nationwide issue now, and I think it's important that the government become aware of just how concerned parents are, and actually see themselves some of the materials that are being taught. You don't even need much commentary, because these materials speak for themselves, and for someone from the outside to look at them, they'll be shocked at the way in which these things are being taught to their children. So I think it's about raising awareness to the government, the Department for Education more widely as well. But yes, I mean, it does seem to have spun out of control, and I have concerns, because every single day that goes by is another day that children are being exposed to these type of materials.
Yes, it is. It is worrying, and also we found that the promotion of just sexuality in general, and promoting this idea that children are sexual beings from a very young age under the disguise of gender ideology and inclusiveness. It's something that we just feel is so dangerous. It's so open to abuse. It's something that we've not seen on this scale before, that people are so happy to sort of bring this into the classroom. That's something that under any other guise you think, well, this is grooming children. It's quite astonishing, really, that it's been allowed to happen to this extent, and that it's got so far and so ingrained into education, almost without people noticing. It's crazy that it's got this far.
Yeah, you're right. It's been completely normalised. I actually want to point you to an anecdote from the other day. I just want to make sure I get the wording correct. I'm sure people have heard of pink news.
Yeah.
They hold themselves out as far as they're concerned, kind of mainstream journalism for LGBT community. They're not some sort of fringe. And with the government's recent announcement on putting this block on children accessing pornography, this age block, I found Pink News, I mean, they blocked me on Twitter, but I have my ways. I found that they'd published an article criticising the block and claiming that it will put LGBT users at risk on the basis of, and this is their quote, it will bring about a lack of pleasure-focused inclusivity. So we have the government looking to introduce something which is for the purposes of safeguarding young vulnerable children, and that is Pink News' response. And I think that's extraordinarily telling.
Indeed, it tells you everything you need to know about their underlying agenda, which I suppose is the scary thing, that this message is so appealing to children. That the rainbow banner, the sparkles, the unicorns. Some of the videos that I've personally seen on sites like TikTok, on Instagram, it's really quite shocking when these activists say we're your family, and separating vulnerable children and teenagers from their own families and from that security and the boundaries that they need, and saying you're always part of our family. There was one in particular, there's one activist that talked about we your glitter family, which again is very appealing to children. It's very worrying that it has this underlying tone of appealing to very young children who are under the age of consent. It's a worrying trend, and I guess it's difficult for parents to monitor what their children are looking at on social media as well. I don't know what you think parents can do about social media use. What would you advise?
Well, I mean, it's just so difficult. And I appreciate that, and I also appreciate the need that children need to have some degree of independence and autonomy. But again, when they're being exposed to these type of materials, and it can come about in various mediums. I mean, I would imagine that a lot of parents who aren't in the know would think that Mermaids as a charity and what they stand up for is, they're very upstanding. They only want to do the right work. They're just there to safeguard children, help children along. And so they probably wouldn't think twice if they're child was listening to a podcast by mermaids. I mean, you know, how bad can a podcast be? But for my sins, I sat through hours and hours of mermaids podcasts, and some of the things that they were putting across were extremely worrying. Similar to what you've just been saying, there was a line from one of the hosts saying that family isn't blood. You know, again, kind of almost drawing young people away from their families. They were encouraging children to set up a misgendering jar at home to punish their parents with if they get it wrong. And then I'm coming across these residential weekends that they're holding, and they're referring to a war that's raging outside against trans children. That's going to put the fear of God into children, and it's turning them away from their families and those who actually care about them and into the arms of this ideology. So I wish I had an answer, but I think parents more than ever need to really dig down into what their children are being exposed to, because there's certain things like pornography or extreme forms of violence, which most parents would just, from looking at, would say, well, this isn't appropriate. But this is different because it's being done in a much more subtle way, in a much more friendly and flowery way, with lots of glitz and bright colours and all the rest of it. So I've just advised parents to be on the lookout, really.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, certainly from a personal level, I had no idea until fairly recently that my oldest daughter's 15, of what she had been getting involved in on social media, and she's loved Harry Potter books since she was really small, loved the films, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, a few months ago, we were talking about J.K. Rowling, and I mentioned that vitriol that she's experienced on Twitter.
Mm.
And my daughter said to me, "Oh, she's a transphobe." And I was just really taken aback. And I said, "Well, where have you heard that from?" She said, "Oh, it's on TikTok." And I said, "Well, what made you think that?" And she asked what everyone's saying. And I started to realise that actually teenagers are so influenced by their peers, and they're influenced by what's on social media, that they think it's true. So I made her actually listen to J.K. Rowling's essay. She didn't want to read it, so I read it out loud to her. And then she didn't have any come back on that, because she said, well, actually everything that she said is right. And so it's created a bit of a conflict in her now, because she's actually quite a staunch feminist, but she's then influenced by the pronoun movement. So she finds herself that, you know, in a bit of an internal conflict, which I think she's coming to work out herself, because I guess she needs to give them a bit of space to work out their own opinions at that age, while actually monitoring what they're doing. And it was a big eye opener for me, of being really careful about what I'm allowing her to look at, and what I'm allowing her to look at on TV. So I've since then put some parental controls in, which you know, I'm ashamed to say I didn't realise that I needed anymore, because you think you know your children, but then once they get online on social media, there's a whole world out there that you're not involved in as a parent. So I would say on a personal level, it's having those conversations with your children when you can, and picking your moments of actually trying to have these conversations with them, but not trying to push it down the throats, because they're not going to listen to you if they've got certain opinions and they're more influenced by their peers. So I guess it's finding the right moments, and I suppose having those conversations with them. But I think it'll be great at the conference when we've got yourself and we've got Stella O'Malley, because we're having a workshop in the afternoon in which you guys are going to facilitate some questions from attendees at the workshop, which I'm sure there'll be a lot of parents there. So we're really looking forward to that and hearing your advice and your input on that.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. I've already developed dossiers of worrying anecdotes from charities, schools, and all the rest of it. I'm sure I'll have accumulated more by the time May rolls around. So there should be a lot to talk about, and I'm looking forward to engaging with parents as well. I think it's really important that people listen to those who are actually going through this and whose children are going through these, experiences at school, and the parents of children who are coming out and saying that they're in the wrong body as well. It's important that we as a society are listening to these people, and I find it hugely helpful to have those conversations. So I'm looking forward to it very much.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we're really looking forward to seeing you, and we would encourage our supporters if they've got any questions that they want to raise with James, that you get those questions, you get those thoughts, and any information in ahead of the conference, and we're looking forward to, yeah, to seeing you in person. It'll be great to not do this over Zoom, to actually do it in person, so everyone's got an opportunity to chat. So I think it will be great that we're in a place where we can chat with like-minded people and raise concerns. So we're looking forward to seeing you then.
Fantastic.
Great.
See you
All right.
then.
Thanks for your time.
Cheers.
Bye.